I'm Jonathan, and I want to introduce you to who you truly are. So, when you normally think of yourself, how do you define yourself? Do you define yourself as the career that you have, as the friends that you have, the groups that you're a part of, maybe a religious group or community? Do you define yourself as your inclinations to do certain things, to say certain things, or as your past experiences? Or as your feelings, how you feel in relation to yourself, in relation to other people? Do you define yourself as your thoughts, as your ideas about the world, or as what you plan on doing in the future? How do you define yourself? When we look at patterns of reaction, we can see that, let's say, for example, someone yells at you. So we have an external event. Then maybe you're inclined to yell back. And so now we've gone internally a little bit. So then maybe we could look at next time someone yells at you, if you really pay attention, you'll notice that you'll be inclined to yell back. Maybe you don't yell back this time. Maybe you did last time, but this time you notice the inclination and you don't act upon it. And then maybe you notice that you have a feeling, you have anger, and that actually came before the inclination, even though you didn't notice it until after. Because that anger is giving rise to this inclination to yell back. Then maybe you notice next time that there are actually thoughts that actually came before the feeling. So you notice the inclination to yell back, then you notice the anger that gave rise to that inclination, then you notice the thoughts. Maybe I'm getting angry at this person because this person's yelling at me. Why is this person yelling at me? So then there's anger, and then there's an inclination to yell back, and then maybe you yell back, or maybe you don't. So notice there's this pattern of reaction. And notice that all these things are reactive. Your thoughts, your feelings, your inclinations, and the world that you produce with them, the speech and actions that you engage in, those are all reactive. And so if you really pay attention, when you notice all the way up this ladder of reaction, up from the external experience that triggered some reaction, the inclination, the feeling, the thought, and then you notice there's a choice. You have the choice to think different thoughts, to feel different feelings, to be inclined to do different things, and to react, or to respond, in this case, in a different way, willfully, proactively, instead of reactively. So who are you in this whole process? Well, if you notice, the external experience is fleeting. It's in the present moment, and it passes, and it's gone. It's in the past. And the instinct, the inclination to say or do a certain thing, that's fleeting also. It's here, and it passes. And the feeling is here, and if you let it go, it passes. And the thought is here, and then it passes. And so all of these things are fleeting. They're ephemeral. And you are choosing these things. So what's here? What's the constant in this whole process? Who are you if your external experiences and the physical world around you that you often use to define you, and the inclinations that you use to define you, the instincts you identify with, the feelings you identify with, the thoughts you identify with, are those really you when they're fleeting, when they're ephemeral, and they are not always here? They're here in one moment, and they're not here in the next moment. But you still are. So then you can't be them. So what's left? The choice. All of these things are changing, and what's constant is the change, the choice, the ability to choose something different, to choose all these things. You choose what you think. What you think causes what you feel. What you feel causes what you're inclined to say and do, which leads to what you actually say and do, which leads to what manifests in your physical world, which is your physical life, the world around you. So, and the circumstances of your physical world. So you have your internal and your external experiences being chosen by whom? By you. And so when you look at the world, normally, very often, we let the world choose for us. Because when we're reactive, that's what we're doing. The world out there presents some physical circumstance to us, and then we end up reacting to that circumstance. And then we allow the world to recreate itself through us in this cyclical fashion where each moment resembles the last. And so we keep recreating our past, and we recreate the things that we have in our lives, and we recreate our past experiences, and we recreate our anxieties, our fears, the things that we're regretful of, the things that we're angry about, that we're frustrated with. We recreate these things because we focus our attention and our energy on it, and we think more thoughts about it, and we feel more feelings that are like those things. We feel more anxiety, more fear, more shame, more regret, more anger, more frustration, instead of creating what we really want. Now, if we look to the brain, we can notice that we're actually creating neural patterns with everything that we think, everything we feel, everything that we are inclined to say and do, everything that we actually say and do. All of these things are creating neural patterns. And so we actually are building the neural pathways constantly. And every time we engage in that behavior again, every time we think the same thoughts, feel the same feelings, etc., in reaction to the same event, we strengthen those neural pathways. And so we have set input equals set output. Something happens and we react a certain way. Something happens out there, someone yells at you, and you immediately respond with anger and with yelling back. And that neural pathway is created in that way, and it's reinforced in that way. And we wear ruts. We follow the same paths. When we follow the same paths, we create patterns. And so, like, if you walk along the same dirt path over and over again, back and forth, you'll find that you actually wear a rut in the ground. And so now imagine you're riding a bike or something, you're wearing a rut in the ground, and then if you wear it deep enough, if you follow that pattern enough times, you will actually end up having trouble getting out of that pattern. And that's just a metaphor for what's happening in the brain. We're actually seeing the same thing in the neural networks. We are creating these neural patterns, and then we have trouble getting out of them. We're building bridges, and we're reinforcing them, and now we have to ask. Because if we are choice, if all these things are things that we're creating, if we're creating our internal and our external experiences, then we have to ask, do we like what we're creating in our lives? Do we like the experiences that we're having?